All right, last but not least, we're going to have an exciting presentation about AI-driven firewall management with NSO. So please help me welcome Jetsy and David.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm Jetsy. I'm a customer success specialist for security, and I hope you all are having an amazing day here on day one. So we are here to present a small POC on the topic AI-driven firewall management with Cisco NSO with my colleague who is the NSO expert.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Quesada. I'm also a customer success specialist, working together, same team with Yatsi. So thank you all for being here today. Before we start with that, let's walk through all the different topics we are going to mention during this session. We will start with a quick overview on what is the idea, what is the solution that we are trying to approach, what is the problematic that we are trying to approach, and we will go to check behind the scenes what are the different technologies that are empowering the solution that we are proposing. We are also going to check some of the AI and machine learning features that we have already in our Cisco portfolio. We are presenting the demo of this proof of concept that we are proposing now, and closing with consideration and future work for this, and having some room for questions and answers also.
So I'm starting the session today with explaining one of my recent experience with my mom. So one day I was talking to my mom on the call, and then we were just about to discuss something about very basic financial discussion, and then she abruptly just cuts the call. So I thought, okay, maybe she's not interested to talk to me. Just in a minute, she calls back and says, like, Mom, what happened? She's like, I went to switch on the VPN because it's not safe. The part here is like, she doesn't understand a word of VPN. She doesn't understand bits and bytes or blocks and pieces of security. But what really amazed me is the kind of attention that she pays to the details while sharing any kind of information through any media, even to her daughter. She just makes sure that even at her age of 60, she's a retired Navy officer, but even though she doesn't understand anything, the technicality of that, but she pays a lot of attention to in terms of sharing any kind of data to anyone. So the point here is, or the inference here is, security is no longer something only entitled to the big entities like service providers or large enterprises or corporates. It's part of everyone's daily life. Like a common man, they should be aware of basic stuff on how to take care of their personal information before sharing with anyone.
Okay, so it's also very important to mention what we are going not to cover and what is not within the scope of this presentation. So we are not going to deep dive into LLM fine-tunings or LLM details. As well, we are not going to mention firewall policy rules details or NSO or Yank modeling details as well. So saying that,
Yep. I'm not sure how many of you are very familiar with the firewall management, and this was a kind of mixed emotions that I used to see when I was working in tech. The first one, they're like when starting the call, and the second one is like after the 5-10 minutes of the call, because always that firewall management was one of the biggest pain point in terms of managing the policies or in terms of troubleshooting, in terms of working with the support team. It was always a painful experience. So we are trying to make it simplify using the best possible assistance that we can provide, and that's why we are here today to present a small proof of concept on how you can simplify the security with the help of AI. And just following the traditional firewalling method, an analyst sitting on one corner of the world without having much knowledge of the firewall or the rule creation or the complexity of the firewall. So if you look at the traditional method, there's a lot of approval chains, there's a lot of time that takes, there's a lot of approval that needs from the firewall respective people, because of course the junior analyst who's sitting and looking in the logs won't have the kind of capability to understand from a large set of data what is actually he should prioritize right now, or maybe sometimes he might be struggling with a simple English to English translation when it comes to the firewall logging. So that was the traditional method, which takes a lot of time in terms of approval, in terms of getting the work done, or in terms of getting a closure on an incident. And that's why the idea here today to take off those extra layers and to remove a lot of sluggish processes in terms of taking care of firewall management from a policy perspective.
Okay, thank you, Jetsi. So, as Jetsi was mentioning some of the pain points, let's make it something better and much easier as just having a simple conversation. Let's take this is exactly how the project is designed to do, having a simple conversation to make some changes. So let's think of it as a smart assistant. The ones that we are using in our daily basis can be Alexa, or can be Siri, or ChatGPT in this case, but especially capable to understand and to interact with network infrastructure, in our case, talking to firewalls, right? So instead of memorizing CLI commands or going through a lot of documentation, we just need to tell to the bot, okay, I want to block this, and we give the specific data we want to that, or we want to obtain that specific configuration from our system, and the system will automatically do that work for us. And it's not only that, but also we can decide which users will engage with our bot by assigning roles, and who can make changes or who can obtain the information as we want. So there are also different integration points that we are going to mention through this proof of concept that we are preparing for you. Okay, we call from chat to change. And the workflow that we are proposing consists of 5 different steps that we are going to begin with the trigger. The trigger can be a user query or an external security event alert that the AI will interpret, will analyze, and will suggest in an iterative process until the final decision is confirmed by the user. So, and consequently of this, it will be pushed for the next step, that is the part of the firewall part.
And when it comes to the firewalling part, as a firewall person who is working with firewall for years, I always would like an admin to have the end user privilege to take a decision on what is the rule that he would like to push to the respective firewall. So in this step, when the rule is getting updated on the firewall management center, which is called an FMC, which manages the respective firewalls, he can take a decision. He can take a decision whether to accept that, and we have methods even to integrate an inbuilt system to get that approval, which is called the change management workflow, which you can integrate with the management center to get a confirmation. So even though the analyst is capable enough to create a rule from a basic logging summary or from a basic human conversation to a command that he can implement in the firewall, but still, the end privilege is with the admin in terms of policy deployment. And some customers, they don't prefer to do a lot of policy deployment. And for such customers, we can even make use of something called CSDAC, or it's called as dynamic attributes, where the policy deployment is required just once. So as a user who's handling the firewall, it's your decision whether you are someone who's interested to do the policy deployment on a constant basis. If not, you can just make use of the dynamic attributes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go. What are the brains behind of this bot, a system? And let's walk through all the components and how all of them are interacting to each other. To start this workflow, we have the user that it will be sending an initial query via WebEx, in this case. So this query is passed to our agent via an API. In this case, the alert that we also can receive, it will be processed in a similar way. The agent will analyze the query and will determine if it's appropriate to execute an action, or it just need a response according to the query that was the initial one from the user. So once this part will be in iterative, the chatbot will ask for more information if it's needed, or for clarification at some point, if that's the case. And it will decide which tool to use in order to execute the action that has to be performed. After that, NSO enters into the place, and it will execute. It will send the configuration, in this case, to FMC. And then we'll go to the part of the security administration that will have the second review, and it will finalize the process by just sending the provisioning to the firewalls. Okay, so we mentioned about AI agents, but let's talk a little bit more in detail about what they are exactly. So they are just basically agents that are powered by LLM, a large language model. In this case, they can change their environment by the use of some tools. So when the query is received, the agent will evaluate whether to use a tool or just a simple response, and it will obtain what are the inputs and what is the tool used for that specific query. Then it will be executed, that specific function, and the output from that function will be the response from our initial query. Okay, so what is the tech stack that we were using for this proof of concept? For the human interface, we were using WebEx. When it comes to the part of the backend, we choose Python as our programming language, and Fast API for our API together with UVCorm for the server. When it comes to the part of the AI, we were using a model from OpenAI together with LangGraph. And for the infrastructure and provisioning, we used NSO for the part of the firewalls. Okay, the LLM that we decided to use was a GPT 4.1. It has a larger context window that is very well to handle larger conversations. So in this case, that we want that the user will interact. So this suits very well. The good point of using this kind of OpenAI models that we will have access to more powerful models, but there is always the option to have our LLM on-prem if that's what we need. So we just need to consider that will be we need to consider other parts for maintenance and infrastructure, or we need to have a team available for that part. But there is always the possibility. Okay, so we are using LangGraph for this one to orchestrate the LLM workflows. In this case, that we are using the chatbot part. Are three important points here in the LangGraph context: the nodes, the edges, and the states, where the nodes are basically the functions, the edges will be the links between them, and the state, that is the data that will be changed from one point to another. So let's go to the part of the tools. The tools in our case are just basic Python functions that we can do different things. We can just fetch, or we can push information from different databases, or we can execute calls to external APIs that we can help us to integrate different systems. In this case, this is how we integrate NSO. And also, very important thing in this part, we need to put a very clear name in our function, and we need to describe what is going to be the function doing, and what are going to be the inputs and the outputs, because this part will be sent to the LLM in order to decide when to use the tool and how to use it. So it has to be short, and it has to be accurate and action-oriented. Okay, so for this project, we prepare different tools that will helping us to achieve our goals, that were mainly NSO queries to the northbound interface of NSO, to deploy the rules, to obtain the configuration. We also create some custom logic if we want to execute one function before executing another. So this part also was included here. And a function to to tell the agent what to do when we receive that event security alerts.
And in terms of system prompt, just consider it as something that the way that you would like to fine-tune your chatbot. Like if you have a preference on, this is the way that I want my chatbot to respond, that's exactly what it does. Just giving the set of instruction on just making sure to train it the way that you would like to have, exactly like how you train your kids to behave in certain situations. So just consider the system prompt as simple as that.
Very important, the part of the system prompt, actually. Okay, well, for the part of the chatbot, with WebEx, we were using a module, WebEx bot, that is using WebSockets to communicate with the WebEx cloud. Very easy to integrate. If you want to start a project, you can check a look at that in the GitHub repository. It will help us to identify the identity of the user so we can assign roles. We can decide also who is going to interact with this agent. And well, we know that it's device friendly. So if we want that our user will take the phone and will start interacting with the agent, so with WebEx, we are free to do that part. Okay, we use NSO. It brings a lot of advantages here. It will allow us to interact programmatically with the northbound interface and the AI agent. For this proof of concept, we were using a net to interact with firewall management system. We just need to keep in mind that the capabilities that we can implement will also depend on the net itself.
Thanks, David.
Over to you.
So since that we have discussed about security a little bit, I would also like to talk about the AI, which is everybody, like, again, just like security, AI is also very common nowadays, just like we can understand how we are really obsessed with ChatGPT sometimes, at least with me. Let's say, if I would like to plan a trip, sometimes I prefer to talk to ChatGPT instead of my partner because I love certain response that it gives because one, it listens. Second, I get a response. And most importantly, it literally remembers what I just told a minute back. So I just love this kind of functions, which is sometimes used to get disabled with my partner. So vice versa for him. He sometimes talks to the chat GPT because he can choose the response that he would like to have. Sometimes I won't be able to get it, even though I'm very flexible. So ChatGPT, the AI, everything is going well. So let's see what we have done with the firewall in terms of like if you would like to elevate the game with the AI. So over the past time, we have done a lot of work on this, and we have something called policy analyzer and optimization, which is like always an admin would love to have, because when he looks at the policy, he would like to know how it looks like from a single viewpoint, how healthy it is, how unhealthy it is, what is the kind of optimization that it would like to do, right? And that's what exactly this one does, especially if you look at this dashboard, this is what exactly we have implemented, where you can see the name of the policy, how much is the optimization that you need. And if you decided to start the optimization as an end user, it's your decision. And it will also show you what is the level of optimization that has been done so far. So it gives you the complete details on when the analysis has been done, how much optimization needs to be done, how many rules are there. So this process runs every 24 hours on all of your policies in the firewall. And if you would like to have this feature, it's possible to get in your on-prem FMC, and also it's available right now with the cloud-delivered FMC, which is part of the Cisco Security Cloud Control. So this is something that gives you a detailed report of every 24 hours. And going ahead, if you would like to see a kind of a graphical view, which you can see here, you can see, like, this is what an admin would like to have when they look at the firewall console, right? You can clearly see that how many rules are there, how many duplications are there, right? What he has to take care in terms of maintaining the sanity or the hygiene of the policy within the firewall. So this is an excellent feature that you can use just to get an overall idea of how much optimization that you would like to do. And talking about the threat and malware, we have also introduced something called SNOT machine learning, which is focusing on the exploit detection. So this is basically to make sure that we are closing the gap of security issues with the attacks like the zero-day attacks, right? We have the SNOT rules, which takes care of the intrusion prevention with the known rules, but what about the unknown rules, the unknown attacks that's happening, right? To make sure that we have trained the system to look at the pre-trained models by Cisco Talos to make sure that it looks at the traffic behavior, the flow pattern, and understand if there is any kind of anomalies that would be logged, that would be blocked. Again, you have option to choose what you would like to do with that traffic, and then it will give you an analysis of the events to understand what are the traffic that got blocked as part of the SNOT machine learning. And this is delivered to you as part of the intrusion policy package that is used in the firewall, and this is the single rule that you can use as part of it. And the last feature that I would like to talk to you about is the encrypted visibility engine, right? Right now, we know that a lot of traffic out there is encrypted, right? But at the same time, we have the customers who has the security compliance and the restrictions that they are not supposed to touch certain data, like it can be the sensitive data, right? So what to do with those kind of traffic? And for such instance, and to close that security gap, we have introduced something called EVE, Encrypted Visibility Engine, starting from the version 6.6 in Firewall. And how does it work is, even without decrypting, it literally looks at the certain TLS metadata, starting from the server name identification, the SNI, the certificate details, the cipher suits, and the flow behavior, and also the TLS fingerprints from the server and from the client side. So looking at this metadata, it runs the analysis through the pre-trained models, again by Cisco Talos, to make sure that if this particular traffic in the question is something that needs to be blocked or wait for one fine day to turn bad. So that's why you don't have to wait for so longer to identify any kind of anomalies by looking at the pattern. And if there is anything, you can take a decision as a user, again, to block it, just to log it, or you can do everything based on the threat score. And from a visibility standpoint, you have the events enriched, which you can see that the traffic is getting blocked based on the threat score created by this engine, which is the EVE. So as an admin, you have endless possibilities. You can send this kind of events to an orchestrator tool for, like SecureX, or something like an inbuilt orchestrated tool for the further investigation. So you have the visibility to an extent that you can take decisions based on what has been generated in your system. And you also have, if you are someone who would like to add an extra layer of approval, that's also possible within the FMC, starting from the version 7.4, which is the management center. And you can integrate this inbuilt workflow manager to the firewall. So when an analyst is creating a ticket, he doesn't have to go through any other media. He can get it directly from the FMC, and he can choose to decide whether I have to accept it or reject it. So these are the features that you can leverage if you would like to elevate the game of making it much simpler, faster, and efficient at the same time. Yeah, going to the blueprint.
Thank you. Okay, so that's good to know what Cisco has implemented to enhance also this part of firewalling. But let's go to our proof of concept. For this solution that we were proposing, we host everything in the cloud. We use running out Docker containers to run our Python application. We have NSO and some devices that we will use to test. So let's go to the demo. Perfect. So first of all, we are just showing here how is our infrastructure. In the cloud, we check that our NSO is working fine. So we have our container. We check our graphical interface to validate that we have some devices there. We also have some device groups. Now let's see if our Python application is running. So we execute the command to run our application. So once it's running this part, we are ready to start to interact with our system. So we are just asking, hello, Mr. Bot, could you please tell me what are the capabilities that you have? In this case, we remember about the system prompt that Yatsi mentioned. So in this system prompt are a set of instructions, a set of rules that we are putting to our agent. So it will take this part, it will take also the tools that we will pass to our agent, and it will let us know what are the capabilities, what this agent can do. So we obtain the response from our bot. And now what if we want to obtain some information about our NSO deployment? We also can ask about that to our agent. So we will just ask, give me a list of the device groups that we have in our NSO deployment. In this case, we have just one NSO instance, so we'll just go directly, but there is a possibility if we want to have to manage from one point in different ones, we can also have this part. So in this case, we obtain the result. Going back again to the system prompt, we are telling to the agent how we want to receive the information. So we want that every time there is a list, give us a format of the table. So we see that we are receiving that output in the format of the table, where we can see the different device groups we have. And we can also obtain even more information if we want to know the device that are managed by this NSO instance. It will execute that corresponded tool, and it will give us the list of the device names we have in our NSO instance. We can also get information from a specific device. So in this case, we want to know the access policies we have in the device FMC1. And we obtain also in the format of the table, and we'll list all of them. And if we want to know even more information about a specific parameter, we can just ask that we want to know the policies rules in this case. And we see that we have different parameters, the table with all the elements that we just requested. And now, in this case, we are asking if the system can help us to create a new rule in a specific policy, access policy. And what it will tell us, it will give us a list of information that the bot will require in order to create this rule, and just a brief example. And with natural language, we are just going to type what exactly we want according to these instructions that were provided. So we will say create a firewall rule that will block, and we will give all the specifications we want in natural language. So the agent will analyze and will obtain the data from our query. Okay, so we enter the information we want, and it will take and it will put in the corresponding parts accordingly, and it will keep us asking questions. In this case, if we want to proceed with the following, we need to confirm. It put two parameters to confirm the source zone or the destination zone as well. So in this case, we are confirming, and we are giving a name to the rule we want. So we give the name, and we confirm that we are going to take the ones suggested. Okay, so in this case, will show us what are the ones that we have and where do we want to place the rule. That's very important. So we are going to specify that we want just to put it, I don't know, in the last place, so after the number 3. And it will just asking us to confirm if what is there is what we really want. We confirm. Okay. So once we confirm that we want to have this configuration in our firewall, it will detect if there is something wrong in the configuration that we sent. So, and it will give us some information about what can be wrong, what we need to modify. In this case, there is a parameter in the source network that has to be changed. So we just give what is the change that it has to implement, that we put a new IP address in this case. So we have this level of validation also of the information that we want to integrate. So once we correct, it will deploy that configuration, and it will show us that that configuration has been deployed, and then we can check in our NSO if that's true. So we will go to that specific configuration, it's in tests, and we see that the name of the rule is there. Oh, it was too fast. Okay. So we go to NSO, we check, and we have the configuration in there with the parameters that we include. Now, we don't want this rule, we were just testing, so we want to remove it. We will just tell the system, let's remove the last rule added, so it has the memory and it knows what was the one that is just deployed, and it will execute the tools, necessary tools, in order to remove that configuration that was deployed previously. Before doing any change in configuration, it will ask if it's really what we want to do. So in this case, we will say, yes, I want to remove this. We will confirm this part. And it will just let us know that the rule was removed already. We can just ask again to give us the list of the complete rules we have in that specific part, just to be sure that has been removed. And we validate that this part is no longer there. We go to NSO and we see that has been also removed the rule that we just included. We can validate in FMC, Firewall Management Center, to check that the configuration also has been removed in this part, and we see that it's no longer there. Okay, so let's go to the second part of the demo.
Yeah, this is a different use case where we would like to block a typical the Facebook access. And so from the end user, first we are trying to see if we are able to access this right now using a very basic command of curl. So you can see that right now we are able to access it. So now let's go to the chatbot and try to create, depending on the kind of alert that we are getting. So you can see that right now these are the existing policies, and we got a new alert asking for this one. At the same time, you can see that there is also giving a suggestion. Okay, if you would like to create a rule for this one. So we are giving the suggestion, let's create the rule. Now when you can see that we are literally converting the human dialogues to a command that you can actually implement, or a rule that you can implement in the management center. So it's giving the parameters that is needed. So it is also checking for the duplications, and it will giving you the parameters that is needed to create this one, and you need to confirm if the given parameters is right, or if you would like to make any modifications to that. So we are giving, okay, let's use this and use the zones that has been identified in the management center, and also we are giving the name of the rule. So now we have given the parameters, it is doing the work in the backend to create the rule. So as a very important part, you need to specify the position, because in the firewall, it's always from top to bottom, the rule check happens. So we are specifying where the rule has to be placed in the management center for the rule to work as expected. We're proceeding with that. And you can see that the rule has been positioned as rule number 1 here. And now going to the FMC to double check if the rule has been updated in the FMC database. You can see that the rule has been positioned as first. Now to take it effect, you need to deploy, which is the end user privilege for the admin to decide whether he has to deploy it or not. So after deploying, it will take an effect to the respective managed devices or the firewalls for the rules to start working. Now we are doing the test from here again. Yes, it's blocked. So we have literally converted a kind of human conversation, which in this case from an analyst to a rule that has been implemented in the firewall, depending on the amount of expertise. Maybe it's not someone who is very well versed in the firewall, but at the same time, he was able to look at that log that he has received, take an action, which has been already suggested, and he looked at the parameters, and then he has created a rule which can be implemented in the firewall. So the only thing that left over with the admin is whether to deploy and to affect it in the way whether the rule has been created in the right way or not. And also, we can add different possibilities here, like we can add the change manager workflow to add an additional layer of approval, or as I said, for the policy deployment, you can choose whether you would like to deploy every time or not, depending on the requirement that you have. Yes.
Okay, let's move to the slides, please.
So now that the demo has been done, there are future considerations and work that you can do, especially when it comes to the system prompt. It's totally up to you how you would like to fine-tune the system. The possibilities are infinite, so it's up to you how you would like to train it. And then you can consider development of like an on-prem LLM, depending on the security constraints that you have. And also consider maybe tuning your chatbot to do identify the duplications into the perfect level, like where you can start doing a policy optimization, which you have seen the firewall has a feature in the cloud delivered FMC, right? So you can even do that depending on the kind of effort and time that you put on it. And also you can integrate the change management workflow and also the integration of the Splunk and CWM. So the possibilities are limitless. So you can try it out depending on the effort and the time that you would like to invest on this project.
Okay, so those are some of the references that we were using in order to develop this idea. I encourage you to go to explore more about AI agents and how can we integrate in our day-to-day operations. And thank you very much. Let's go for some questions and answers.
All right. We did have some questions. Do we have any questions in the audience to start with? Let's start with Slido. So, is the chatbot model customized to follow specific operational secured practices?
Okay. The chatbot model that we are using is an OpenAI, is Chat GPT 4.1, so it's not trained, it's the one that is open. But we are using the system prompt in order to guide the behavior of this agent, how it needs to react. But it's a good idea if we want to enhance this part to train our own model with specific operational or security practices we have.
Thank you. How do you ensure that chatbot interactions comply with company security policies?
Yeah, I can take that question. So, as David was saying, if you are someone who's using the public LLMs, just follow the basic sanity part, which is like not putting any kind of sensitive data to the feed. Right? That's the very basic that you can do. And also, if you want to take it to the next level, you can go for the on-prem LLMs or the self-hosted LLMs. And also, you can even consider using the private cloud offerings like Azure OpenAI so that the data stays in the Microsoft tenant itself, right? So depending on how much that you would like to put a control on the data, how much kind of control that you would like to put on the host. So depending on that, you can kind of fine tune it and take up to the next level.
All right. What are the use cases that you are considering for firewall management with LLMs and land graph?
Based on the POC that we have showed, it's just one part of it. So the very common use cases that you can consider, definitely the configuration task assistance, which you have already seen here, like converting the human dialogues to a command that you can replicate in any system, like for matter, any firewall, not just the Cisco firewall, right? And the second one is getting a log analysis summary, that an English to English translation, maybe like a one-line summary of an alert that an analyst received. So a log analysis summary. And the third can be like an incident response automation, which you can create like in a loop using the framework or using any kind of orchestrated tool. You can create that if something is detected like in so-and-so IP, create a workflow maybe to inform a WebEx group or maybe to create a ticket or to send it to a particular tool for the next level of investigation. So the possibilities are infinite, and the way that you can consider all of this is like consider the LLM as a kind of a brain that gives you the answers, and use the system prompting to fine-tune it in the way that you would like to see the responses, and use any kind of framework, like we have used the land graph here. Use any kind of framework to create the workflow so that you can avoid any kind of repetitive task. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So some more questions actually. If the NSO service is multi-vendor, do you need any change to make the tool multi-vendor?
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, at this point, we are just using FMC. So we are using the net to the net of FMC to communicate with this controller. So if we would like to make it multi-vendor, we'll need to include the nets of the specific devices to NSO and just update our services in order to include multi-vendor devices.
Thank you. How many rules can it change, add or delete at a time, and can it run policy compliance checks and determine the violence in policies?
Yep. Yeah, right now we have done the testing with single rule at a time, but I'm sure we can take it to the next level so that you can, and right now the system that we have built, it is detecting the duplication. So if you're trying to replicate the same rule again, it will show you the duplication and it will not let you create that. So to an extent, we have that right now, but there's always possibilities to fine tune it. Like how it is already there in the policy analyzer and optimizer, it's in the cloud service. It's for the on-prem FMC, it's for the cloud-delivered FMC, but if you want to do it for your FMC, we can fine-tune it the way to the next extent to detect those. Yeah.
All right, we have two more questions, so let's go with them. Would you consider that you are building the AlgoSec killer?
I was not aware of it.
And last question for today. Is it possible to limit the scope of the LLM to avoid risks?
Okay, well, I will take this one. When it comes to the system prompt, we can also include some safety parts and knowledge boundaries if we want to reduce this part. So we can indicate some rules. Of course, there are other methods that can help to avoid those kind of situations in case someone wants to inject some strange prompting like somewhere. But we can add the rules in the system prompt and define if we want to behave in a specific way, or if we don't want that the user will use this bot for other purposes, like, I don't know, asking kitchen receipt or something like that. So those rules can be integrated in the system prompt.
Yeah, you can fine tune it the way that you would like to, and then maybe put a rate limit on that, or maybe try to keep it stateless so that it doesn't have the memory, depending on what kind of LLMs that you prefer to use for your own environment. If not, it's always good to use the on-prem, depending on the things that you have control. Yeah.
All right. That is it. Thank you so much, Jetsi and David, for this
Thank you very
presentation.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.